Are you getting ready to go on an international trip? Whether it's your first time or your 50th, I'm going to share 3 tips that I utilize all the time. I used to live in China for 5 years before moving back here to the US, and I traveled frequently on my own as a solo female. And these 3 best practices I feel like set my trips up on the right foot, setting me up for success to have a great time and keep safety in mind while I'm doing it. Before we jump into it, I'm Logan Clements. I'm an event producer based in Seattle, Washington, but I execute events here and all over the world. I do want to encourage you to subscribe, turn on that little notification bell so you get notified every single Monday when I drop new videos. I'm also the co-host of the Better Events podcast with fellow event pro Mary Davidson, where we dive even more into these event topics. We also share why we love events, some of our favorite books, event production, virtual events, you name it, and it's just a longer form content. So listen wherever you listen to podcasts. So these 3 tips are my go-tos for any trip that I'm taking outside the US, and usually my top 3 pieces of advice for any friends who are going to travel abroad. I studied abroad twice in college and then moved right after graduation to China for 5 years. And I had the opportunity to then travel to more countries. And so these, again, were my 3 tips that just kind of set me up for success. So my first tip, if you're traveling internationally, is to try to land in the daytime. If you're going to a new country, nothing can make it seem more intimidating than arriving in the pitch dark. I learned this lesson kind of the hard way because I think it was when I went to the Philippines. We got there at 10, 11 p.m. at night, and everything just looks more intimidating when it's dark out. And it just made everything feel a little more stressful. We were trying to figure out how to get to our hotel, all this stuff that just, again, the next day when we woke up and it was daylight, it was like, oh, everything looks so great, not as threatening. I highly encourage this, especially if you're backpacking or maybe in a country where English is limited. Again, Asia, this was really common over there. But making sure that you arrive in the daytime is just going to make you feel a little bit better overall. Also, if you're trying to save some money, you're going to be a higher chance of having public transit available during the daytime versus when you get in at nighttime. Usually it's just taxis, Ubers, or private cars. My second tip is to plan your transport from the airport to your hotel or your first stop, where essentially whatever you would need to know the minute you land in that airport. Make sure you look that up ahead of time. Have it already planned out. Know if you look this up at home or before you get on the plane, because it can sometimes be really hard to connect to data or Wi-Fi when you first land in a new country. And I think this is just so helpful because that is often, when I reflect back on trips, the most stressful time is right when you get there and just figuring out where you're going. And so my tip would be to know what the signs to look for are. Are you looking for an official taxi line, or are you looking for a hotel shuttle line? Are you taking public transit, or are you going to take a taxi? And know what common traveler mistakes to avoid. For example, in China, if you don't want to get in a black taxi, it's often just kind of an unhired, unofficial taxi. And it's not, again, some of them could be unsafe, but it's more you're going to get overcharged. There's also a lot of people. I organized some transportation for some events we had in China. And so I spent a lot of time at the airport waiting for international arrivals. And I witnessed many a friendly person who is there speaking some English, approaching you, trying to help you outside of baggage claim, offering to help you find a car. I will also say when I first arrived in China, I did this. The first time getting off the plane, when I decided to move there, I didn't follow my own advice. And I ended up getting helped by one of these nice people. And they got me in a nice car and I got to my apartment. But I paid probably 3 times what you should be paying. And it's just something I could have easily avoided if I'd done the research. So just think through wherever you want to go from the airport to your hotel or where you're staying or whatever your first stop is, and look up your options and know which one you're going to go with so you have a plan and you can hit the ground running. And my third and final top tip for international travel is to bring some cash from your home country. So this is something that I would say, and when I say cash, I don't mean bring, if you're American, US dollars. Some countries, US dollars are helpful, so that's one option. But I always like to exchange for local currency before I get there. And so this can be whatever you're comfortable with. It could be a couple $100s. You can exchange at the airport. That's always an option. You are probably going to lose some money in that transaction just because they know that you're at kind of a last resort before the airport, or you can go to your local bank and do an exchange, and that's usually a little bit better. This tip comes from because I found sometimes where I've been like, oh, I'll just get cash when I get there. And there's either no exchange open when I get to that new country, or I'm staying at a hostel or something that doesn't necessarily have exchanges available at the hotel. It's also helpful to look up to see if your bank has any partnerships with international ATMs. That was something living in China. I utilize Wells Fargo was one of my banks, and they had a partnership with a bank called ICBC in China, which meant I only got charged $5 for taking out cash at a Chinese ATM, and I could just take money out directly in Chinese RMB, Chinese yuan, their currency. And that was a way better deal than anything I was going to get cash-wise. But again, I lived there and I learned that, and that took some time for me to figure that out. So if you're just going to a new country, make sure you bring cash. It's going to help you out, and you just have something just in case of emergencies. And it's, again, up to you and kind of your financial situation for what feels like the right amount. Mine is anywhere usually between $100 to maybe $300, depending on my trip and what I plan on doing, just so I have something. So again, those are my 3 tips for international travel. Try to land in the daytime, plan your transport from the airport to your hotel, and bring some cash and exchange it in your home country before you even travel. And just following those 3 tips is going to set your trip up for success from the jump. I get commented sometimes for work things that I'm a very easy traveler because I've learned not just these 3 tips, but just learned to kind of roll with it. And so the better you can get at travel, if it's something you want to do for your work or your job, the better of a worker you're going to be. Well, I'm Logan Clements. I'm a freelance event producer based in Seattle, Washington, but I execute events here and all over the world. I want to thank you for watching my video, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.